Hello and welcome to the Cinema ATL Podcast. The Cinema ATL Podcast is a weekly podcast that examines the world of entertainment through the lens of local Atlanta filmmakers. That would be us, your hosts. I'm Michael D. Friedman, and that is...
Martin Kelly.
And this week it's time for a big movie review. Yes, big movies are back in theaters, and Martin and I were lucky enough to score an advanced screening for Black Widow. What did we think about it? Well, we have our non-spoiler review in just a second, but first, Martin, please tell our listeners how they can help the podcast out.
Sure, you can help us out by commenting and subscribing and rating this on wherever you're listening to it. So if that is Spotify, great. If that's Apple Podcasts, great. If that's iHeartRadio or SoundCloud or Amazon or Stitcher or even Google Podcasts, that's awesome. Comment, rate, and subscribe at those places. That really helps us a lot.
Yes, and we also want to hear from you. You can always tweet us at CinemaATL or at our personal accounts. Mine's at Clever Transient.
Or hit me up at Marte_Real1.
And don't forget to check out Instagram at CinemaATL Podcast.
Definitely. Or if you're old school, cinemaatl.com. We still are on that site.
All right. Well, I mean, that's the intro. Let's talk about Black Widow. All right. For those of you who don't know about Black Widow, where have you been? What's going on? What's wrong with you?
You've had plenty of time. You've had plenty of time to be aware of this.
Black Widow is the newest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and after a nearly 2-year delay, it's finally here. Scarlett Johansson is back in the title role as Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. We get to see her on her first solo movie in the MCU. Does it live up to the gold standard that Marvel's set? We'll see. We're going to discuss all these details without any major spoilers, so we know we're early and we don't want to ruin it for you, but we want to tell you guys what we thought, and we'll just jump into it.
Yeah, definitely. So Black Widow is directed by Kate Shortland, and she has done several indie films like Lore and Berlin Syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
The screenplay written by Eric Pearson, and he also did Thor Ragnarok as well as Godzilla vs. Kong. Also Jack Schaefer, who's the head writer and she's the head writer and the co-creator on WandaVision. And also Ned Benson gets a story credit.
Right. And that's interesting that Eric Pearson did Thor Ragnarok, good movie, and Godzilla vs. Kong. The cinematographer was Gabriel Beristain. He has some Marvel history in his past. He did Blade 2, Blade Trinity, and Agent Carter, some of the episodes of that series. And say what you will about Blade, the Blade sequels, they look good, so it's good, right?
Totally, and that's old school, school Marvel,
and future Marvel. True. They did announce that Blade is coming, so we'll see.
Definitely.
And then, of course, we have the cast. Scarlett Johansson, of course, is back as Black Widow, and we introduce a whole bunch of newer characters to the MCU, including Florence Pugh, who plays Yelena Belova. Rachel Weisz plays Melina. David Harbour plays Alexei, who's also known as the Red Guardian, basically the Soviet Union's equivalent to Captain America. And then we have Oti Fagburney, who plays Mason. Ray Winston plays Dreykov, and of course William Hurt is back as Thaddeus Ross. So,
is that Ray Winston or Ray Winstone?
I think it's Winstone. I don't know. Okay. I don't know how he pronounces his last name, but he's pretty notable actor. He's done a lot of good.
Oh yeah, he's been in all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. Got a great presence for sure.
So we're not going to do kind of what we normally do for a movie review, where we talk a lot about the plot, because we don't want to give too much away. This is a movie that a lot of people have been waiting for. Black Widow finally getting her own solo adventure. Some people think it's a little too late, and probably it is too late. I mean, not too late, but it's something that should have happened sooner if you ask a lot of people.
Right.
So, I mean, it's kind of one thing we did want to talk about is how does this fit into the overall MCU, and is it too late for her to have her solo adventure, especially because spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Endgame, which, again, while you're listening to this podcast, if you haven't seen
Right,
Endgame,
right.
she dies in that. So, this is obviously a prequel, I guess you would call it, or something.
Yeah, I think that's a misnomer.
Right.
It's a movie set previous. I don't
Right.
think
It's not
you
even,
can really call this a prequel, honestly.
yeah, because it doesn't really just talk about, like, it's not her origin story or anything like that, even though there
Right.
are elements that you do learn a lot more about her backstory than you normally would. But yeah, it's not really a prequel. It actually kind of takes place in between like Civil War and Infinity War. So it's like
Right. Hmm.
kind of a
Yeah,
spin-off more than anything. Yeah.
definitely. No, definitely. But it's a unique spinoff in the sense that it does take place previous to the timeline that we're on now as movie watchers. So that is
Right.
unique about it for sure.
And in the time, we don't talking about timelines, with Loki out and
Yeah.
and the Spider-Verse and all that stuff. It is in the MCU timeline. It's not like an alternate universe. It just
No,
takes
no, no.
place
Yeah,
earlier.
exactly.
So,
It's on the
not,
main MCU timeline.
not to
Yeah.
confuse anybody.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
but yeah,
But
so
of course, that's getting really technical with certain people who know all about that stuff. Some people are
right.
just casual movie watchers.
Yeah, well, we got to be careful. The TVA is going to come take us out of our timeline,
True,
and
true. But would we know it? Nobody would hear it. I guess
I know
this podcast if they would get us.
they would prune us. We would be pruned. Um, but yeah, so I guess just overall, I think there's some things that people might be interested in knowing about this film. They're curious, people that follow the MCU. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, my first question was like, how well does this fit in the MCU? So, I was talking about my kind of feelings on it was that, yeah, it's kind of just kind of there. It's just kind of part of the MCU, but it's really kind of it's a standalone movie, which is kind of cool because Marvel doesn't tend to do that. They're always trying to set up other things and
hmm, hmm.
and get other characters involved into it. And this is really kind of just about Black Widow. So in that case, it's really cool to finally see a lot of this backstory that's been kind of alluded to in previous like Avengers movies, but to me, it kind of does kind of fit outside of the MCU. It's kind of weird that this movie is coming out now because it doesn't really kick off Phase 4 as more as it kind of looks
Yeah, it's
backwards.
exactly, which is what to its to its detriment. Because of the delay, I think that has a lot to do with it.
Right.
I think this would have resonated so much more. If it had come out when it was supposed to have come out after sort of the buzz of Endgame, and and they could have like it could have been a real nice reflection on that character.
Right.
As they transitioned into the next phase. So I think unfortunate events, have caused that, so it doesn't fit in. But I think you're right about it being a standalone, which makes it kind of irrelevant to the fact of whether it fits in or not, because it is a really good standalone, for this character, in and of itself. And again, it may not be, part of the grand MCU, the grand Marvel, spectacle kind of thing. But
Hmm.
it certainly stands alone as a good movie for this character.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the movie. I think it's well done and it's entertaining for the most part. But you do kind of have to view it as how does it work within this bigger movie series that's almost like a big TV show, right? So this is kind of
Right,
one. This is
right.
kind of a what they call a bottle episode of a TV show, kind of almost,
Yes,
where they take a certain
totally.
character and just focus on
Hmm.
them. Um, but it does it's well done. It's entertaining. But I think overall it kind of just is a letdown if you're trying to, this is the next new Marvel movie. It doesn't progress
Yes.
the Marvel story
Yeah,
as
if you look
much.
at it in terms of progression, Marvel progression, which had been so like it had been set on a roll, the
Right.
progression of each movie, setting up the next movie and creating awareness for the next movie, and also a hype for the next movie and an anticipation for the next movie. This doesn't do any of that. It doesn't
No,
do
well,
any of that,
except
honestly.
for a
But
slight bit at the end credit
sure,
scene, which we won't
sure.
go into details. There is an end credit scene, so stick around. Just like every other Marvel movie, there is an end credit scene, and
Yeah,
it does kind
definitely.
of set up some stuff, and it gives a winking nod about some of the other Marvel properties out there. So it's definitely worth staying around for it. And if that's what you're looking for, the end credit scene is probably the best part of the movie for you.
Right, yeah, if that's your primary goal of watching this
Yeah,
film is to figure out, what's next and get a hint, then that would be the place to get it.
right,
But yeah, I mean, I think people should look at it as sort of an homage to one of the great characters who hadn't had their own,
right.
standalone for a while. So I think that's mainly what this is, and what it needs to function as, kind of.
Yeah, so I think you really need to set your expectations going into it, that you're not going to get all these Easter eggs and crazy things that you're getting in the TV shows or, previous movies. You're not going to have those moments. There are some cool nods to the comic books and stuff in it. But like the Red Guardian characters, kind of cool. It's a nod to the comic books. In fact, there's a place where Florence Pugh's character calls him the Crimson Dynamo, which is actually another Marvel character that she mistakes him for. So
Oh,
it's kind
really?
of funny. Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah.
that. Oh, that's funny.
So that's
That's
kind of
funny.
funny. So speaking of Florence Pugh, I just want to also talk about like what are some of the standout characters in your mind? For me, Florence Pugh's character Yelena definitely stands out as a standout character in this film.
No, totally. I mean, it's almost, it's funny because it's almost like, the Black Widow is meant to showcase the new character, and she's fantastic. Actually,
Right.
Florence Pugh is really great. Her character is very cool and unique, and I'm looking forward to, whether this character, goes forward. We'll see. But yeah, so I think it's really a good showcase for Florence Pugh on a level she hasn't quite been seen before. I mean, she's obviously talented. She's been nominated for an Oscar before, but
Mm,
but more people are going to see this actually than have seen her other films.
right.
For now.
Right.
So fantastic. Also, David Harbour was a breakout
Right.
character in this movie as well, and I thought his performance was really really good in a lot of ways. Especially I'll talk just slightly. This is not a spoiler, but I really like what I like most about this film is the fact that it's pretty much female driven. The whole, I mean, I'm talking about completely, not even like Atomic Blonde, and we
Hmm.
love that movie, but it's all about females who can kick ass. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that I can really appreciate. So, but he's one of the male figures in the film, and he really held his own in terms of the scene stealing, and things of that nature.
Right. I think he's really, the character's great and really funny, but he doesn't take away from the story, which is really, Black Widow and Yelena's story. Um,
Right.
and I think we can talk about this because it has been mentioned in the trailers, but they're kind of like a family. It's a family dynamic, which really, that to me was the best part of the movie. The the sisterhood between Natasha and Elena, and then them dealing with the parental figures as well. And so I
Right.
think that's what really shines through in this movie. And I think those relationships are really drives the movie forward. And you're right, it's kind of not really Black Widow's movie as much as it is setting up, Elena
Right.
and her character. And in fact, I'd almost say they're co-leads. I think actually Florence Pugh might even be credited before Scarlett Johansson in the credits, which is kind of crazy. But
It's kind of crazy, but this gives me, and I guess, this one's a little this review is a little bit different because we're trying to be at least as spoiler friendly as possible. But I got to give
right,
Scarlett Johansson a lot of credit for allowing this film her vehicle. This is her vehicle, but yet she allowed this film to be a real showcase for Florence Pugh and others in,
right,
in the cast. So she, to her credit as an actor and a contributor to the series, is that she still step back a little bit in order to make the story work well. And I think you're right. The best elements are of the story is the family dynamic and how they resolve their family issues. You know what I mean? And so I think to her credit, it didn't become just a like Black Widow kicks everybody's butt type of movie.
Yeah,
This
right.
is
I mean,
this
she
is
does
a
kick butt. She does kick butt, but
no,
yeah.
totally. Yeah, she does. Don't get it twisted. She'll still kick people's butt. But the fact that it's not all about that is kind of a credit to her and her contribution, to the storytelling. So
Right.
I think that's right. I think you're right to say that, Florence Pugh is on the same level, character wise with, the ostensible lead character of the film. And so, give a lot of credit to Scarlett Johansson for that, for, being committed to telling a compelling story rather than just showcasing her character.
Right. I would love to see and perhaps in the future, maybe they could do a Elena and Red Guardian team up movie. I think that would be funny. Um, we'll see. We'll see what can happen. So yeah. So talking about, we can't reveal a lot of the plot because we don't want to give anything away. But I just think that the tone of the movie, to me, I've heard a lot of people comparing it to Atomic Blonde. I don't think it's quite on the level of the Atomic Blonde with the fight scenes and stuff like that, but that's kind of a good, semi-good correlation. I actually was feeling more like I was in a Bourne movie when I was watching this.
Yeah, and that's been brought up too in some of the comparisons, and I think that's accurate. I definitely agree with you. It's so funny. We just talked about Atomic Blonde recently,
Right. Yeah.
and there's no comparison, to the fights. Honestly, to be honest, I mean,
Right.
and again, it shouldn't be. This is a Marvel movie, and not a treatise on the Cold War,
Yeah.
or whatever. But
Neither is it R rated either. So yeah.
correct. Yeah, exactly. So there's no way it was going to be that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean it's not good. It's really good. And I think you're right. A good comparison would be Born. And it does do a lot of really good things, in the film. There are a lot of really even we talked about how the fact that the movie is all about this family dynamic, but yet there's plenty of action. And so it's done really well and handled well and certainly worth your time if you're into that part of it. So, but yeah, I think you're right. It's more Bourne than it is Atomic Blonde. But again, it's not an unfair comparison because I
Right.
think that's the inspiration. I think that's the inspiration, and they do at least sort of give these characters a little bit of that. I guess what would you call it? Like gravitas in terms of the fights are not all comic book style. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. No. Yeah. It's very spy movie down to earth. Well, I wouldn't say down to earth because it
Right,
does,
right,
it does
right.
ratchet up, but it does feel more grounded than superhero, right? You don't have
Yes.
people flying around and using crazy powers and stuff like that. It feels more along the lines of maybe in a Marvel tent, like kind of maybe like Captain America, Winter Soldier, or something like that. And
Hmm. Hmm.
they talk about one of the cool things about the Marvel universe and the Marvel franchise that has an advantage over other franchises like Star Wars or anything else trying to build a franchise is that the characters are so vast that each movie tends to feel like a different style,
Genre.
right?
Yeah,
Different
yeah, exactly.
genre, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is kind of their spy version or their James Bond, Jason Bourne type movie, right?
Totally, totally.
And it does it well, and I think it's interesting, and that there's different, it's very globe trotting. There's different locations that they go to. They go from Morocco to
Yeah,
Siberia to
yeah.
different places like that, and so it
Definitely
definitely
Bond
gives it the
esque for
feel.
sure,
Yeah, it
for
definitely
sure.
gives you that feel, and it fits because that's Natasha was a spy, so it
Absolutely.
definitely the spy movie, the spy genre really fits this film, and I think they do it well.
Definitely, definitely.
Um, another thing I wanted to talk about was kind of, I mean, we talked a little bit about the action, some of the set pieces that are in it. There's some big action sequences, especially towards the end. There's a big one.
Right, right.
Um, and it's pretty crazy, if you ask me.
Oh, totally,
Uh,
totally.
and
Yeah,
a little over the top, but
yeah. That's where it gets into fast
Fast
10
Nine,
territory or
Fast
whatever.
10.
Fast 9. It does get into that
Yeah.
territory, which those
But this
none
is
of
a
those
superhero
people
movie, though, right? This is not, and Fast.
exactly.
That's what's ridiculous about Fast Nine is like they're not superheroes.
Exactly. They don't have any superpowers, but neither technically does Black Widow. So
Yeah,
I guess but I would pick her to be able to do some of this stuff that I wouldn't pick them to do.
right,
but no, you're right, and I think like I said, we talk a lot about the family dynamic and and how they deal with it, and that being sort of the best part of the movie. But there are still three big action set pieces and sequences, so
right,
it doesn't detract from that kind of movie, and certainly you're right about it being a spy film. I think it certainly pays homage to the era of spy film, actually, that it is even referenced in the
right,
movie itself. You know what I mean? So
right.
I
Exactly.
think that's part of it.
Um, and then one of the things I was going to talk about also is that we talked about the fact that Black Widow dies at the end of Endgame, so um, it's kind of a good thing that they don't put all the focus on Black Widow, because when you're watching a character that you know what's going to happen, it's kind of like how much of in danger are they? I mean, they're not going to kill off the main hero normally, right? In a
Right,
movie
right.
like this, but even still, it still feels like, well, she's not going to die. She's not going to be in any real peril. But then by adding the
Right.
family dynamic to it, it does add to that, right? So you get these characters that you really like, and you don't want to see anything happen to
Hmm.
them, right? So
Yeah.
therefore, it does put you on edge, whether or not she can save these people that you've grown to like during the course of the movie. So I think that was a good call by them to do that.
Oh, definitely. And I think it does help. One thing I'll say about this, and how it relates to having her, we know her fate. You know what I mean? But what I
Mm,
like about it is that it kind of underscores the fact that she's okay with her fate. You know what I
right,
mean? Because of the fact that she's been able to, uh, fight for her family's, you know, plural.
right,
You know what I mean? And I think that's,
right.
this kind of movie underscores that will in her, and it helps underscore her heroics, in later times.
All right, and then I mean, we talked about kind of what we thought kind of works and what we liked about the movie. Is there something? Is there anything in particular that you might have been disappointed in the film?
I don't think there's anything that I was disappointed in. The only thing that I kind of question is, like, we've seen her in so many other films, and then we see her as an operator by herself, and it's kind of like it feels like we should have known some of the things that she's able to do as an operator by herself by now, and we don't.
Hmm.
You know what I
Right,
mean? So it's like there's a particular character. It's like, who the heck is this? You know what I mean?
right,
And it's
exactly.
like, okay, we've never known her to have these types of relationships before. You know what I mean? And so
Exactly.
and so it's a little off. It takes you off a little bit,
Yes.
because we're used to her working as part of this team, and I guess we never noticed how she gets things done. And then here we are, she's operating on her own, and then she's got this whole other thing going on that we don't know about, which we feel like we should. That's
Right.
all.
I was going to say that there's some characters in here that you feel like like if you weren't that experienced with the Marvel universe, like if you hadn't seen all the movies, you might be like, "Oh, should I know who this guy is?"
Right.
Like
Right.
you're just
Exactly.
like, and it's just like, no, this is a new character, but it really feels like they were just like in previous movies.
Right. Yeah. It's like it feels. It's I don't know how to describe it. It just feels like we dig it that we're with Black Widow, but then she's interacting with all these characters that we feel like we ought to be familiar with, but we're not.
Right,
You know what I mean? And so that puts you off a little bit, in my opinion.
right. And then I want to say, something about the main villain, which has been, shown on trailers and stuff. So I'm not giving anything away about Taskmaster.
Hmm.
I felt
Hmm.
like that character was a little underwhelming. I was really hoping for more from that character, and I won't go into really reasons why, but I think once again there's a little bit of a villain problem in a Marvel movie.
I totally agree with you, and I, and I think you're probably more disappointed than I was because you know the characters more, being
Right,
being a fan of the comics. So I didn't know what to expect from the character, but at the same time, it was still kind of underwhelming.
right.
That villain per se. So I did think, what I did like, but the other villain, had a really devastating comment that
Hmm.
really could have been explored more in a different movie. This movie, it couldn't have been explored more just because of the nature of the film. But the
Right,
fact that one comment he had, and I won't even say it because people will catch it and they ought to know what it is because it really is kind of a devastating comment that's kind of accurate. You know what I
right,
mean?
right, right.
And it really could have used a little bit more of a treatment to this motivation and this comment that he made. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
that was almost a missed opportunity, but at the same time, I really can't say that because of the type of movie that this actually is.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking while I was watching the movie and after I saw it that I kind of felt like this could have worked better as a Disney Plus series, honestly,
Oh
because there
yeah,
was a lot of content in there that like seemed to just be missing. That and a lot of concepts that were set up that really could have been explored more.
and
Um,
that's definitely one of them. I really would have liked them to, and they've kind of touched on it in previous films, even with her, not being the focus.
right,
They've touched on the situation that's explored here, but it really was ripe for, like you mentioned, a deeper dive. And so even like a limited series of maybe even
but
4 episodes or
well, I mean, even
something.
like Loki is only 6 episodes, so I
Yeah,
think
yeah, that would totally. I really think you're right that this, obviously they didn't know what was going to happen, but the fact
right,
that it got delayed, man, they could have really maybe retooled it into something like that,
right.
and you know, I would have really liked to see them explore that element a little bit more.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's about as much as we can say without spoiling too much. I hope we're insightful without being too vague.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully.
But like I guess the final question is, what's your grade? Would you recommend it? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. I mean, just based on the fact that this kid, this is a chance for a great character to get their shine and really kick butt, and also for for women to be action heroes on screen. I think that's great. And for that alone, I would recommend it because I hope we get to see a lot more of it.
So, do you have a grade?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, B plus.
B plus. Okay. I'm gonna go a little lower than you. I'm
You
gonna
always
go.
do.
Do I? I used to be an optimist. That's the thing, but I'm gonna go probably B minus, and that's just because I'm grading on the Marvel scale.
Gotcha. No, no. I,
um,
I I expect you to be harsher on Marvel than me because of the fact that you've got the rich background and
right.
actually knowing all the characters.
I mean, overall, it lands in the lower tier for me of Marvel movies. But that being said, I enjoy all Marvel movies, so it's definitely worth seeing, and it's definitely fun to actually. It was really fun for me to actually go see it in the theater. It was my first time back in theater since the COVID hit, and it was just a really fun experience. And I would recommend seeing it in the theater so that you can get the maximum impact on the big screen. But I go
Definitely.
B minus.
Okay, that's fair. No, and again, like I said, I expect you to be to hold them to a higher standard because of the fact that you know everything about the comics and everything
Grading
else,
on a
and I don't.
curve. Grading on
Yeah,
a
exactly,
curve.
exactly.
Well, all right. Well, thanks for joining us this week. And if you enjoyed this, next week we're actually going to go delve deeper into the Marvel universe with our top 3 Marvel movies. So stick around for that next week. We want to thank Eureka Failure again for providing the music as they do each and every week. And we want to remind you to please share, please like, please comment, please do whatever you can. It really helps us out on the socials to get the word out. Definitely. And Martin, do you have any final words of wisdom for this week?
Yeah, let me just say, let your dreams be bigger than your fears. Let your actions be louder than your words. And let your faith be stronger than your feelings.
I normally have a witty retort to your things, but I don't have one this week. So I guess it was that impactful on me.
Well, good.
I can't come up with some corny comment. All right. Well, like I said, check us out next week for our top 3 Marvel movies, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.